Hey everybody, it's Ron, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Shadow and Doc Savage comic from Dark Horse Comics. I've been covering the Doc Savage pulp novels in order for the last couple of years, so if you'd like to check them out, I'll put a link to my Doc Savage playlist in the description. Since I've gotten to know the character from the original source material, I figured I'd start checking out the comics and reviewing them as well. I've decided not to go in any particular order, so this miniseries from 1995 felt like a good place to start because it's only 2 issues. It's also a team up with another legendary pulp character, the Shadow. The Shadow is an awesome character from the 30s, so it'll be cool to talk about him a little bit on my channel. But if you want to take a deeper dive with that character, check out the Shadow Cast right here on YouTube. It's hosted by a guy named Razorfist, and I think he has the best coverage of the Shadow anywhere on the internet. Anyway, this book was written by Steve Vance with art by Stan Manoukian, and I actually had to look both of them up because I wasn't familiar with their work. Aside from some Simpsons comics and some Superman Elseworlds, it looks like Steve Vance is mostly a novelist, and Manoukian is a French artist who seems to have gotten away from comics, so it makes sense that I didn't know too much about them. The cover artist for both issues is Dave Stevens, who was the creator of The Rocketeer. And that was basically a love letter to these pulp stories, so he's a perfect fit for this. I love this title page. It really sets the mood right away, and it looks like the opening titles of a 1930s film, so it's just a great aesthetic for this material. The Case of the Shrieking Skeletons is also a goofy title that works because it's very similar to some of the Shadow and Doc Savage novel titles. As for the actual story, I think it could have benefited from having more than 2 issues because it does feel a little rushed and it has 2 larger than life characters sharing the pages. But overall, it was still fun. While the art isn't my favorite, there's something about the vibe of this comic that's perfect for a Doc Savage and Shadow story. And since it was created in the 90s, it looks like something that Joe Johnston could have directed. So yeah, I really like the atmosphere of the whole thing. As for the introduction to Doc Savage and his companions, I'd say Vance pretty much nails it, especially with the banter between Monk and Ham. You can tell he's a fan of the source material because there are a lot of great references. Even the introduction to Doc Savage has him doing his daily workout routine, which Lester Dent writes about in almost every novel, so that was cool to see. I was surprised by how many supporting characters from both Doc Savage and the Shadow's books they fit in. On the Shadow side of things, Commissioner Weston, his driver Shrevey, and his agents Burbank and Harry Vincent all fit into the story pretty organically. And then Doc Savage pretty much only has Monk and Ham, which I thought was a good decision to leave out the other 3 guys because even in his own stories, it gets a little confusing with all 5 of them, and it would be way too much with a crossover book like this. And it wouldn't be a crossover book unless there was a fight scene between the 2 heroes, and I thought that was pretty well done as well. I love the surprised look on Doc's face when he realizes the Shadow can go toe-to-toe with him. So yeah, those little moments are really what everyone reads this type of stuff for. The one thing that I object to is Doc's personality in the opening. Something seemed a bit off about him admitting that the girl, Bernice, who needs their help in this story, is attractive. I think Doc would have been more reserved about it because for anyone who doesn't know, Doc has 0 interest in women in the books. It's actually pretty funny because they always love him, but he's devoted to his mission, so he kind of tunes it all out. That's why it's a little out of character for him to even say something as small as that. Is it a big deal? No, it's just something that I noticed from reading a decent amount of the novels so far. The whole Monster Men thing in the beginning is an intriguing setup, but I thought it was kind of predictable that it would eventually turn into a Nazi plot. I feel like writers who take on pulp stories are always tempted to use Nazis because these stories all take place in the 1930s, and Indiana Jones also popularized the Nazi as the main villain. So, although I get why they did it, I wish they took inspiration from either a Shadow or Doc Savage pulp that didn't involve Nazis, because there are so many different types of stories to choose from. All that being said, I do admit that the inclusion of the Nazis and blimps added to the fun adventure aspect, which is more suited to Doc Savage than the Shadow, but the Shadow works really well in those scenarios as well. He's a little too out in the open than I'd like him to be, but he still retains an air of mystery, especially compared to Doc, so I thought it was well done for the most part. The main plot with Bernice and her father working for the Nazis to create super soldiers that end up turning into these zombie monsters is a little forgettable, as is the main villain, Frederick von Parzival. But it almost doesn't matter because the two issues breeze by, and I think fans of these pulp characters will find a lot to like in these issues. So please be sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content, and check out my Doc Savage playlist if you want to know more about this character. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, it's Ron here with a quick announcement. When I started this channel, I was reading and reviewing the Dune books and other sci-fi related material, and most of you might not know that I'm also a musician. So when I was reading these sci-fi books, I started to get inspired and decided to make my own soundtrack to use for my videos, and now I'm excited to tell you all about the first volume in the Ron Reviews original soundtrack collection. This album includes the first 17 tracks featured on my channel, and it's available now exclusively on Bandcamp. Be sure to check the description of this video for the link to the album. Thanks so much for the support so far. I know I'm just starting out, but I hope you're having as much fun as I am. So check out the original soundtrack Volume 1 on Bandcamp. This music is great if you want something moody and atmospheric to listen to while you're reading some science fiction. I think you're going to love it. Thanks.